Oh, Tom Kirkpatrick, what's up, buddy? Glad you're here. Long freaking time, Tom Kirkpatrick.
Oh, who's that?
He was a bartender at Daft Show forever when I was there. Got a packed show today. I think I'm gonna get a tablet this week.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna go to Sears.
I need to get mine.
What's up, April? Because you know, you're anxious just want to see if there's any deals. What's up, guys? Kenson, I haven't seen you in forever. Hi, Yvonne.
Hi, Janet. Ali's in here. Hey, Ali.
Oh, is that okay? We got Facebook and Twitter going here, guys. What's up, Josh?
We'll start in just a second.
They do like Scott Adams and raise a glass.
Oh yeah, the simultaneous sip. And Jack has the simultaneous step when he takes his.
Oh,
glass
listen,
of
I
wine.
haven't seen the beginnings of his. Hey, April. Turn it up a little more. Such a good song.
No,
You keep pushing till someone gets killed. We got a string. We're tired of messing around.
Oh wait, Ali.
Tired of losing our
oh, cool. Hi there. Very appreciative. Oh yeah, fake news. An enemy of the people. Ali's creation. Hi, Jack.
look how we bashing our enemies here.
I hope it's creepy porn.
That'll be fun. What up, dough?
While your lies are still the same.
All right.
Awesome. We got some good stuff for you guys tonight.
Actually, the simulation has created good stuff for us
Yeah.
tonight. The world, the events.
I know. Yeah. Okay.
Or Peruvian. Or Colombian.
Okay. We'll go ahead and start this. Love that song. That song is from the soundtrack for Hoaxed. Soon to be released on the premiere will be the 20th by Mike Cernovich. Cannot wait. I'm Yvonne Burton. This is my brother Lewis. And we are back for another edition, another episode of...
March of Ides.
We started it back in March to talk about the Ides. If you've watched before, you understand what we're doing, that the Ides used to be back in history before Shakespeare wrote his play. The Ides were a time of celebration, and since Trump seems to be making everything great again, we're making the Ides great again. And the Ides were a celebration of paying off debts, and I can't remember.
It was a time where you paid off your debts, and then it was basically the Roman New Year, and it was
it was a good day. It wasn't an
planting your crops and getting springtime, and actually they had to add January and February later because 10 months did not work with our rotation around the sun.
Yeah. So we're briefly going to touch on some good news that the mainstream media just glosses over because they are just another branch of the DNC.
And I would just real quick, one reason we do this, and I think Trump brought it up in his interview with 60 Minutes, is that if people like us aren't out here doing this, there are a lot of people that are not going to see things
Yeah, they're not going to hear.
reported. They're not going to see it. It didn't happen.
Right.
It's like the tree falling
In the forest.
in the
Yeah.
forest
Doesn't make a
and
sound.
nobody's there, not making a sound. So Trump did it he did not mock Miss Ford at our rally in South Haven 2
No.
weeks ago.
We were
And
there.
We were there. He did not do that, but he did, point out that she did not know a lot of things and did not come with corroboration.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people saw that because the news media had to report on it because they were so incensed. And so a lot of people saw, well, wait a minute, let me look into this further.
It changed that whole trajectory. It put it on a new path. It was awesome. It was brilliant. But anyway, we're going to talk about a few of the good things going on, and then we're going to talk about some synchronous dates in history, some very interesting stuff that has happened in history. I think it'll be one of the most interesting ones we've done yet. But anyway, some of the good news. Kavanaugh was confirmed.
Exactly.
After the greatest smear campaign in history. I mean, did they throw everything in the kitchen sink at him and they still lost? And that was our second conservative justice. So you never Trump people. Anytime you want to reach out and thank us.
There's two of them that Ben Shapiro said would never happen.
Yeah, and Trump retweeted Ben Shapiro today, and that Ben Shapiro tweet sounded like one of us. It would have been nice if it would have been one of us.
It'd be nice if he was more consistent.
Yeah. So Kavanaugh was confirmed. That was just last week, right?
Yeah.
Pastor
Over a
Brunson
week ago.
released from Turkey.
Which is not being covered anywhere.
Yeah, and not only are they not covering it, they're not covering that.
That he knelt and he prayed with President Trump in the Oval Office.
Yeah, it was moving. It was amazing. And like Ali said, Trump is one of the most prayed over leaders that I've ever seen. It's amazing. Trump has shrinked government jobs by 16,000 since he has taken office, and the right
to try bill was signed a few weeks back.
Yeah, right to try drug bill. It's a shame that we even needed a bill like this. I have a friend from 4 years ago who had brain cancer who fought to get into it was a program at Vanderbilt. It was a new technology, and it took forever. I was just watching him waste away before my eyes, and he ended up getting accepted into the program, but I've always wondered if he'd gotten in it, right when he wanted to, would he be alive today? And that bill, that's an amazing thing.
And it took 40-something years to get passed.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Trump's not doing anything. Trump's stupid. Whatever.
His approval rating is over 50%. And I think, that is an amazing feat.
And it's probably really 60.
Yeah, it's probably higher than that. But with 90% of the mainstream media being just negative, I think that you guys should realize more than anything how irrelevant the mainstream media is. I mean, we call them fake news, and they really aren't able to set the narrative anymore the way that they used to. But you think about all of them on the same page, that your major networks, and then your people like the Daily Beast and Vox and these other, and even with that, his approval rating is still over 50%, and that's amazing. America is now the world's largest producer of
oil, natural gas, fossil fuels.
Yeah.
We've surpassed Saudi Arabia.
You know.
And that's huge in the geopolitical part and with leverage and everything and his negotiations with other countries, especially Russia,
And
China too. But Russia's economy, I know I'm exaggerating, but Russia's economy is freaking 80% dependent on their exports of crude and natural gas.
And the polar opposite from the last administration. Also, the unemployment, I'm going to come back to that one, but unemployment is lowest since 1969.
I was 2.
I was just born. I've just dated myself. The U.S., this was interesting. I didn't even know this story broke today. Maybe you guys out there did. Did you guys know that there's 3.5 million more registered voters than live adults? I got that from investors.com.
And that's been all over the news today. That think about that. There are 3.5 million more registered voters in the United States than there are live adults. And Hillary Clinton won the popular vote by 3 million, which 80% of that was in California. So Trump right after the elections claimed that, and of course all the media talked about, Trump claims with no evidence that there were millions of illegal voting going on. Now it's coming out, hey, you know what, maybe he had a point about that, like when everybody poo-pooed that he was being wiretapped.
Right.
Which technically wiretap is not the right word, but every step of the way they've had to retract and clarify and correct.
And a
things
lot of
that they
people don't
report.
understand this issue with when you go and you get your driver's license and they ask you if you want to sign up to vote.
Yvonne's checked this in Shelby County.
I was appointed to an election reform commission about 7 years ago when we were supposed to clean up the voting problems here in Shelby County. And what I found out was that when you go in Shelby County, which is Memphis, and sign up to get your driver's license, and you tell them that you want to register to vote, and I got to ask the Shelby County Commission, when you get those forms to give them a voter card, what's the process for weeding out those who are citizens and those who are not? And there is no process. It's just rubber stamped. So I'm sure that's going on all over the country, and that was the point of Motor Voter was this very thing, I think. Also,
so now the two newest.
hold on, I want to go back to Willie Brown. We're going to touch on the Kavanaugh stuff in just a minute, but I don't know if you guys heard Willie Brown earlier today was quoted as saying that the
He's
Democrats
scared
went
about
too
the
far.
elections coming up because he believes that he thought the Democrats were sitting pretty good going into the midterms, and now that this the Kavanaugh event,
The Kavanaugh affair,
atrocity or whatever you
Yeah.
want to call it, happened, that now he's scared and that they went too far.
So when
Even he sees it.
Yeah, and then just right before we went live, we saw where Cherokee Nation disavows Warren. You want to tell them?
Yeah, Cherokee Nation disavows Elizabeth Warren, and I'm sure that I think she's insulting anyway, but it seems to me that she's insulted a lot of the Native Americans in this country with this whole dump that she dumped on us today. I mean, it's just,
Oh yeah, it's funny.
it's outrageous, and it's
At the
it's
beginning of,
backfiring
just think
hugely.
about this. The beginning of the day, Elizabeth Warren has this 5-minute video, and that she's going to show that she's Native American, and she's got her family around me, and she's fine. They've got Trump. They've got
Yes,
Trump.
I saw her tweet storm. We were just looking at
She's
that.
still this tweet
for
storm's
over
still
an
going
hour,
on. It's still
every
going on.
3 minutes, and the thing is Elizabeth Warren is not addressing any of the pushback on her claims about ancestry. Every one of her tweets, every 3 minutes, is about how evil Donald Trump is.
Yeah, and it's
She's lost it.
doubling down. She says TikTok November 6th. I'm like, she's just piled on more. Like from the Kavanaugh lit a fire under the GOP voters, and now Warren is she just poured more fuel on the fire. Great.
Keep going.
Stormy Daniels, and then we saw Stormy Daniels' lawsuit was dismissed, and she has to pay Trump. She has to pay Trump fees.
And since Trump every quarter donates his salary to a charity, I'm sure that it's going to be God makes things happen for good.
Yeah.
And so that GoFundMe
What
account
man
of hers
meant for evil, God
may
can
end
turn
up,
for good. Yes.
that GoFundMe account may end up helping a lot of needy people.
Funny, but that's just amazing. Anybody out there that doesn't think the Trump curse isn't real. Anyway, so now we're going to be talking about some synchronous dates in history.
So, and this is October 15th, the Ides of October, in history. And this section today, the ones we picked out, it deals with fake news. And you look at, everybody's heard of the Salem witch trials. Well, in 1674, there were some witch trials in Torsåker, Sweden. A lot of 71 people in one day beheaded and then burned.
Yeah, most of the 60% or 70%.
And 65 of those were women. And the way they identified these folks is that the priest had 2 boys stand in front of the church doors, and as people came in, the church boys would identify everybody coming in. The ones that were witches had an invisible sign on their forehead. So these young boys in 1674 Sweden were seeing invisible signs. Well, one of them accidentally accused the wife of the priest that started this deal in this particular town. And of course, she slapped him and shouted at him and got him to realize that he had made a mistake. So forensics weren't as developed back then as they were today.
Yeah, and the thing about it is, witch trials didn't just happen here in the, it happened all over the world. But one common factor they all had was that the accused was based on whether the accuser liked or disliked them. Nobody was safe from accusation. Not rich, not poor, not whatever. And we kind of got the same thing going on.
Kind of like today.
Not just with the Trump Russia, that's a witch hunt, but the Me Too movement and just being able to accuse people without evidence. History never repeats, but like I said in the title, it often rhymes.
And this is one we're going to get into more later into the broadcast today, is 1894, the Dreyfus Affair. Some people may have heard of this, but he was a Jewish army captain in France. He was arrested for treason, and when you research this one, there's a lot of parallels to today. He was wrongly accused and was probably a fall guy for somebody else doing the stuff that he was accused of. But we're definitely going to be getting into him more with him and some another great man called Kosciuszko from Poland, which everybody needs to know about.
Neat, yeah.
But we're going to get into that later. And then another, in 1917, Mata Hari was executed in France for treason. And a lot of people believe, Mata Hari, she was a spy for the Germans against the French. But you look into this one, and she was probably set up as well. And then we'll probably talk a little bit more about her. We got a few stuff on her. And then you go to 2006, and the Duke lacrosse players were accused of rape. And on this day, in 2006, they went on 60 Minutes, of all places, to try to proclaim their innocence. And I'm sure they were met with the same attitude as Trump was last night. And then 2018, you've got Kavanaugh falsely accused. Man. And we're going to hint about, hopefully in the next week or two, a nice interview that we're hoping to get. Important interview that ties into all this fake news and people being able to accuse people of things and the media running with it. And that's the big deal, is the media, they make the story.
They create hoaxes. Hoax is going to be released on 20th. And they create hoaxes. And this hoax from 1999.
And people's lives are destroyed.
Was that 99 or 2000? The Condit. Gary Condit.
2000.
Yeah.
99, 2000.
18 years ago.
So we're hoping to...
I've been talking to Gary Condit and DM, and he's supposed to call me this week, and we're supposed to set up a time and figure out how we're going to do this. But I wanted to talk to him after Mike's hoaxed, because it's such a glaring and perfect example of how the media does these hits, these smears, and anyway, what is this down here?
This was getting into the synchronicity of events that's happening. It's just the small stuff.
So are we going to that, or are we going to specific? We
can go whichever way.
Okay. I wanted to talk about the Dreyfus affair, because you can call it the Kavanaugh. We've had our own kind of Dreyfus affair, the Kavanaugh affair. I think the Trump Russia thing kind of fits into the Dreyfus affair too, because the whole thing with the Dreyfus affair was Alfred Dreyfus was a captain?
He was a captain in the army.
A captain in the army, and he was accused of treason. He was accused of giving military secrets to the Germans. And it was triggered in September of 1894. And it was based on, this was interesting, it was based on what the French called was a bordereau. And if you look up bordereau, it's basically a dossier. If you look at the WikiLeaks description of the whole event, they even describe it as the Dreyfus dossier. As you read it, I highly encourage you to Google the Dreyfus affair, because there's so much involved with it. he was of Jewish heritage, and back then, you know, the anti-Jewish sentiment was already brewing. You know, the Holocaust didn't just happen
In a vacuum.
in a vacuum. It was years and years of an environment that, you know, when Hitler got elected, you know, it was just the right time. It was just the perfect storm. So him being Jewish probably helped him.
It helped him be the target, to be the fall guy, to
Yeah.
pick him, because it
And-
made it that much easier to make him the fall guy.
Right, and so then, you know, so he got convicted. They tried him, they convicted him, and they sent him to Devil's Island. Served almost 5 years off the coast of French Guiana, and
Horrible place.
yeah, horrible.
Papillon. You can look up Papillon to see about
So
Devil's Island.
a couple of years after he gets sent there, Lieutenant Colonel Picard, I think I'm saying it right, discovers evidence in a letter that actually another man is probably responsible for it. So when they convicted Dreyfus, the biggest evidence they had is they had this letter, and they had a handwriting expert that swore, you know, oh, it's definitely Dreyfus, and that was basically it. I think it was Picard, the dude that actually was the spy. The letter, his girlfriend later released letters. I guess, you know, there was some, you know, she was getting back at him, or, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
And so this Picard compared the handwriting, and he figured out, oh my gosh, it's this guy. And when he tried to bring that to the authorities' attention, they sent him
Shipped
to
him off to
Tunisia. They're like, they wanted it to, but the public was getting a hold of the gist of what was going on, and it's kind of like now when you've got the Trump, you know, the pro-Trump people,
It
and
became a big controversy in France at
and
this
they were
time.
so divided. Really, they were so divided, kind of like you know, they are not now. But anyway, they knew that once the letters from the girlfriend were released and word got out that Esterhazy was probably guilty, they knew they needed to do something. So they held a secret trial, and where he was acquitted. Behind closed doors, he was acquitted, and a judgment. And so when he was acquitted, that was like fuel on the fire right there. It just lit up this, and it actually caused some riots in the street. And then on the Ides of January 13th, Emile Zola published his famous J'accuse, which basically detailed this, you know, this hit, this
And then they went
travesty
after
of
him.
justice. Yeah, and then they went after him, accused him of libel. He was convicted, but he fled to London before he could be caught. But the interesting thing about what happened to Dreyfus, so the issue was brought back up, and a new president of France, Emile Loubet, if I'm saying it right, he pardoned him. Emile was the 45th president or
Prime Minister of
of France. And it's interesting that Emile was the 45th, because I want to read you just a little sentence on what they said about Emile, what kind of person. So President Loubet belonged to the peasant proprietor class and had none of the aristocratic proclivities of President Faure. Well, I don't need to go into that, but I just thought that was interesting, because doesn't that sound a lot like Trump?
The people he's fighting for, and what he identified with.
And imagine if back then, during the Dreyfus affair, which is, you know, it's a big deal, because there was something that happened in 2006 that had to do with it. I'd have to go back and look, but it was such a big deal back then that it's in France.
Yeah, it was still affecting them.
They
I
could
think
all-
in 06 maybe
they would all
name
know
was
about
cleared
it.
or something, or I can't remember what that was.
But you know, there's nothing new under the sun. And imagine if back then, during the Dreyfus affair, if they had the internet. There's so many of the stuff that's going on right now. Elizabeth Warren, Kavanaugh, that because we have this great equalizer,
That we can have pushback, and this whole,
and expose these frauds that are, you know.
and we say the media, and we're not conspiracy theorists here. We're just me and Yvonne have talked about being sick of what we see on the news going back decades. I mean,
Yeah,
you and I
yeah.
growing up, we've always seen it. We've seen it.
Right.
And that's why I've done a Periscope, and you might be able to look it up. I don't know if you still can, but I've done short Periscopes on one of them titled "The Emperor Never Had Clothes,"
That's a good one. I like
and
that.
I say that the emperor is the media, the DC establishment, and it's both parties. It's Republican and Democrat,
Right.
especially in the last 2 decades, and probably going back further. I mean, there's so much we have to revisit, so many stories and things like when we talk about Mata Hari and Dreyfus and the Duke Lacrosse players.
And that's why I want to talk to Gary Condit, because
we need to revisit these, and it needs to get out that, what you've been told is not true.
I think Stefan Molyneux tweeted something like this: the fake, if the fake, something about the fake news. What do you think that history is?
Yeah, I know.
So that's one of the things that we're going to start focusing on is correcting a lot of what stories that we just think.
And just getting everybody out there that's listening to us to think for yourself and start, finding, branch out and look at other avenues, and don't, this movie Hoaxed. There's stuff at the end of this that made me look at myself, and it regards Black Lives Matter. And I am a typical conservative, I would say, in a lot of ways. And I started to shut down at the end of that.
Yeah.
But I hung through, and I listened. And I kind of wasn't a full open mind, but because I was still going, oh, Black Lives Matter. They don't like cops. They want them dead. But
I did the same thing.
This man, he had an epiphany himself. And at the end of that movie, I was like, I have still even though I'm thinking I've got eyes wide open all the time, they're still not open enough. And I think it's rooted, and we forgot to pray again before, I think, because we're bad about that. But it's rooted in. And for me, it's got to be truth is from Christ, basically. And we've got to remember that.
Yeah.
And the hoax thing, it just at the end of that movie, when I saw that,
we had an epiphany while we were
me
watching.
and Yvonne both at the same time. We didn't talk about it until a few days later.
But we had the same kind
But
of
we
reaction. I'm
admitted it
watching
later.
it. I'm like, wait a minute, what's going on here?
And
then when it finished, at the end of it, I was like, oh my gosh.
Some of these people, and say these people on the other side of whatever you're believing or whatever chasm is in between you guys. There's a lot of stuff we can see, and it's eye to eye. And I'm not saying we can't see eye to eye on abortion. That can't happen. But there are some situations people are in, and we've got to see it from their perspective.
Right.
And so that's what Hoaxed, I'm hoping it's going to do for a lot of you guys.
Yeah, me too.
Because I can't wait to watch that thing again. It comes out this Saturday. Also with the synchronicity stuff, and kind of finishing up on this segment, 45th Congress met in 1877, and this is going at the end of Reconstruction. And we could do a whole freaking series of periscopes on Reconstruction. But that 45th Congress, one of their big acts was the Posse Comitatus Act. And I just thought it was kind of neat that you're getting out of Reconstruction, and the states, the southern states, the former Confederacy, are getting readmitted into the Union. I think the last one was in 1877 or 1878, maybe.
Hold on.
So-
Somebody just asked what was the name of the movie. Not hosted. It's
Hoaxed.
hoaxed, like a hoax.
It's a hoax
Hoaxed. Hoaxed.
as a verb.
Yeah. Yeah. I think. Yeah.
And so we talked about the 45th Prime Minister of France pardoning Dreyfus. And I think tied in with this is today in 1991, Clarence Thomas was confirmed as a Supreme Court Justice
Yeah.
too.
Amazing. And
Another man who was falsely accused.
What did Clarence Thomas called it? A digital lynching? A virtual lynching?
Digital, was it?
Virtual something.
Digital lynching.
And
that's what it was.
And the thing about it is, back then we didn't have the internet, and they still, even then, didn't have the people. Most of the people were on the side of Clarence Thomas,
Yeah.
and he was confirmed. But now, they tried to do the same thing here in 2018, but
Same
you have
playbook.
the internet, and we can see you, and so you've just. It's like Clarence Thomas back then, but you've lit a fire because we
Yeah.
can see you and all your corruption. That nobody is safe. That if they can go after him for something that y'all claim he did in high school, then nobody
Yep, hoaxed, produced by Mike Cernovich.
Yeah,
I've been sharing it on Facebook, the trailer. I've been sharing it on Twitter.
it's an amazing.
I keep
trailer.
saying hashtag game changer because I really believe it is. Look up the hoax trailer on the internet and check that out. Were we going to still mention? You know, Hayes, this is a quick mention. You know, we're talking about hurricanes and they've never been so powerful before. And when they people say it's never been this hot, but it's always breaking a record from the 1940s or
Right.
the 1920s. So what was going on in 1920 with CFCs and
Right.
and CO2. So in 1954, the Hurricane Hazel hit North Carolina as a Cat 4, a very devastating hurricane. Of course, the population was a lot less in '54, but it killed a lot of people in the Carolinas, and then it went up into I believe it was Toronto as a extratropical storm, and it killed a lot of people there. And it had such an effect on the country at that time that they retired Hazel from naming
Right.
hurricanes. So, that's another. It's not kind of the fake news thing. Oh, because people were actually writing about the hurricane that hit the Panhandle. Oh, it's because those people voted for Trump and he doesn't believe in global warming, so they're getting their just desserts. And I'm
Right.
like, this is the left today. They turned a tragedy into, well, you know what? You shouldn't have been living in Panama and voting for Trump because that's why the hurricane hit you.
Yeah, so why did Hurricane Hazel in 1954 kill 195 people? Like Trump said last night, it's not that he doesn't believe in climate change. The climate's changing, and it's going to keep changing.
Climate always has.
Yeah, that's one thing that we know. The climate is going to change. No, so now we can talk about Kosciuszko.
Kosciuszko. And Kosciuszko is a man that I found in a book that I read a few years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. It's called The Peasant Prince. I can't remember the author's name, but The Peasant Prince. And Kosciuszko was, I guess, kind of like a minor nobility from the Poland. He grew up
Polish-Lithuanian.
the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. And I believe that he very well could have been Poland's George Washington if he had the right geopolitical and physical situation that the United States had.
Yeah.
We're isolated over here. We did deal with the superpower at the time, but we only had to deal with one enemy at a time. And Poland, throughout its history, has always had to deal with Prussia, which was the forerunner to Germany, and Russia, even Sweden sometimes, and Austria-Hungary, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and then Austria, another German nation. Always had to deal with these enemies. But he came to America in 1776 and requested a commission from the Continental Congress, and the next day they made him a colonel. Well, this
It's the Peasant's Prince.
is it the Peasant's Prince? I thought it was a Peasant
It
Prince.
might be it would make sense
It's
that it's
on
the
my phone.
peasants.
Because he believed in rights for a lot of people, and he actually did something. Just as an aside, on his lands, his family lands in Poland. It's what? Oh, another one of those. On his lands, his family lands in Poland, I think there were like 34 families that worked their lands. He did I can't remember what timeline this is, but peasants were forced to work for their lords a certain number of days per week, and he made it to where the women didn't have to at all, and that the men went down to 2 days a week. It actually hurt him financially.
I can like that.
But he comes to America in 1776. I don't know how much interaction he had with George Washington himself, but he was he fought for our revolution for 7 years, and ended up being a brigadier general at the end.
And he was a great engineering.
He was a military engineer.
Yeah.
He designed. He worked on the West Point defenses for almost 2 years. The very defenses that Benedict Arnold was trying to give over to the British when he turned traitor. Kosciuszko did. He always wanted to get a free Poland, and he fought for it, and he went back. There was always wars and battles in Eastern Europe at this time, and he thought they had a chance fighting against Russia, and I think it was Catherine the Great was the empress at the time, and he thought that they had a chance, but his own king sold him out, or kind of pulled the rug out from under him and surrendered before they could even really get started. So he was kind of back and forth, and he ended up imprisoned by Catherine the Great for a while, but then she died, and then the next Tsar came along and pardoned him, and he ended up getting back into Poland. I know he went to France for a while. He went to Switzerland, I think.
Yeah.
And was there some other stuff?
I didn't
He had
know.
some other stuff.
Yeah, there's some other stuff on. I didn't know a lot about him, but one thing I saw is that he was such a great military strategist. And if the Americans, I mean, if our guys would have listened more to him, maybe.
Well, actually, that's a good point, because you go to Ticonderoga early in the Revolutionary War, they get there, they're there, and I think Burgoyne, the British general, is coming for him, and he said, "We've got to put some cannons up on this hill over here." And a bunch of other engineers agreed with them, but the commander said, "No, we're not doing that." Well, when the British got there, they put cannons up there. The Americans saw that they were in a bad position, so they had to leave. So they had to retreat, and they're coming down into New York from Canada, and he uses the land, falling trees and damming rivers and stuff to slow the British down. And then we get to the Battle of Saratoga, and I think it was General Howe
Yeah.
with the Americans who actually wrote at the end and said, we won that battle and decimated the British Army, and he attributed a lot of it to Kosciuszko and his defenses and him, choosing the land that they were going to defend.
Yeah.
He had an eye for the land.
I'm just amazed. I had never heard of him. You read a book. I mean, before you read this book about him a few years ago, did you know about him?
No, I read a review and I said, I got to read this book.
So I didn't. What I don't. I'm a big fan of Lafayette. The French Lafayette that helped us in the American Revolution. As a matter of fact, when I first signed on to Twitter, I was Lafayette.
Yeah.
But I did not know, and it's amazing to me that such a prominent and such a force.
Crucial. He was also crucial in the southern.
Why do we not know about him?
And a lot of people, all the battles that everybody read about are in the North during the Revolutionary War in New England. But there was some key stuff happening in the South too, and he was crucial down there because he went down there for a couple of years and was crucial in helping us defeat the British, or at least push them back down there. There was a battle in North Carolina, the Battle of Guilford Courthouse, and even though the British won that battle, it decimated the army. It was like a Pyrrhic victory again. Pyrrhic victory that, I can't remember. I think it was actually at Bunker Hill. The general there of the British said, "I fear that if we have any more victories like this, we'll lose this war." So there were several battles during the Revolutionary War where the British won, but they had to leave the field and they were decimated
to lose the war.
And also with Kosciuszko, it took him over 7 or 8 years to get his pay, working, fighting for us in the Revolutionary War. And when he did, he amassed his American earnings, and he put in his will that he wanted it to go toward freeing slaves and educating them, supporting them after they were freed.
I read that.
But complications, he left and went back to Europe.
And the money didn't get.
He died before he came back, and the money never was used for that. He actually was good friends with Thomas Jefferson, and he actually made Jefferson the executor of his will. When he died in Europe, Jefferson, he was already aged and I guess getting infirm a little bit, and said, "I can't do this." And he gave it to somebody else, and that person said they couldn't do it either. So it didn't happen.
Yeah, the money didn't go towards what he wanted, but it's just such an amazing character for us to not have
learned about.
Another thing that I was going to mention is I don't know if you've ever heard of Q ships. Q is in the letter Q. They were British, right? And the only reason we're mentioning it today is because in 1918, a British Q ship, Cymric.
The Cymric sank the British ship J6.
But I wanted to talk about the Q ships because we have this phenomenon, or it's kind of died down. Hopefully, a little.
The Q phenomenon.
Because there for a while at these Trump rallies, you'd see groups of people with their T-shirts and their signs, and now like the South Haven,
where we were,
there was one. And they promptly removed her.
So we've been to 2 rallies, and let me dispel some myths about Trump rallies. At this rally, there was one Q sign, and that was taken down quickly and gotten rid of. But at the rally we went to in Nashville, there was one protester. So there wasn't a lot of Antifa running around.
There wasn't. Yeah, there was none in South Haven.
He had a poorly made sign, and He wanted to provoke,
but he didn't want to
but
talk.
he didn't want anybody talking to him. So
Didn't
I
wanna
guess he
talk.
didn't have the courage of his convictions.
Right. But this Q thing, the reason I bring it up is because the Q ships were decoy ships. They were back in the First World War, and maybe it started before the First World War. I'm not
Oh,
sure.
it was
but that
World War
mainly
where they were the German subs were having
the U-boats.
tremendous effect on Allied shipping, getting their supplies, especially from the U.S.
And the
to
U-boats
Europe.
were deadly. They were having a problem with the U-boats, and they needed something to help them
To
take
counter
care of
that,
that
so-
problem. And that's what the Q-boats were for. And they were like a decoy ship that would prompt the
They looked like a merchant ship that was defenseless, and
So back then, you couldn't just release your weapons
the
underwater.
subs
You had
had
to
to
surface.
to
And the
attack.
Q ships were meant to get them to surface. And once the Q ships, once the U-boats noticed that it's just a civilian, it's not a problem, then bam, they would hit them once they surface. But the whole Q phenomenon, to me, it's kind of been a diversion, a decoy, a distraction. And I know there may be some people watching that hopefully not still believe in Q, but it diverted your attention. It made you think that everything's going to be okay because the White Hats, there's this force for good that's just going to take care of everything.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, it kept you
I think
complacent.
that's what I was going to say, complacent.
Complacent, and it's just interesting that they were called Q ships and they were decoy. I just think that's what
I didn't see anything why it was called. Oh yeah, Q ship because it was from
Queensland.
Queensland.
Queensland, yeah. The Great Dictator
By Charlie Chaplin was
Was
released
released.
today in 1940.
which is interesting.
There's a lot of little things that happen today. We kind
I
of
Love
touched on
Lucy debuts, and that's just fun. Thinking about that, okay, I Love Lucy was just, it was a great show. Can you imagine the people of I Love Lucy canceling it after
Yes,
the
because
first
she
successful...
tweets, because Lucy tweets something bad one time, and then they fire her right away after a few hours,
Right,
and then they just make the Arnaz show.
the Arnaz show, and nobody was going to watch. She was the key. I
Mm-hmm.
loved Desi Arnaz. He was a great part of it, but it was the combination. But you took away the key component, and that's what the Roseanne show and now the Connors, which it's going to premiere tomorrow. And hello, and hopefully, I don't know if she's going to. She did tweet out tonight to follow her on live on YouTube. We're hoping, and we've been trying to encourage her to live stream during the premiere. It's definitely going to flop. We didn't, I saw somebody tweet, we didn't tune in to watch Darlene or any of the other characters. It was Roseanne. And, probably it's going to be, I think it'll be the biggest blunder in TV history. Just kind of like First Man. First Man?
Yeah,
It flopped.
yeah.
More people watched A Star Is Born, and that wasn't even A Star Is
I'm
Born.
not interested in that either.
Me either, but it beat First Man. Also, I'm gonna talk about the Black Panther Party was created, and then
Today
we'll
in
wrap this up.
1966.
But a lot of people don't realize that back in the '60s, and this is coming from the was it Romania that the dude defected?
Disinformation.
He wrote the book Disinformation.
He was head of Romania's intelligence agencies, and he worked closely with the Soviets. And he
Yeah.
has a great book called Disinformation.
And in there,
can't
I
remember
learned
his name.
that a lot of the discord and problems that we had in the '60s with the Black Panther and the divisions that we had, there was just a lot of discord going on there. A lot of that was created and sown by Soviet propaganda, and it was Soviet
And they've
propaganda.
been doing it they've been doing it since before World War II.
I'm telling you, I'm pretty sure in that book that the Black Panther Party was created by Soviets.
Or had a hand in it.
Or they had a hand in it, yeah. And so kind of the same thing going on. You have the Obama administration and everybody, they want us all to believe that Russia interfered in our elections, but
They've been trying to interfere for decades.
the way
and
that they interfere in our election is they sow discord, and they're still sowing discord. And the left in this nation is helping them sow discord, and it's sad. I hate to see it. But I don't think they're winning. But our country is divided more than ever, and I hope that somehow we can change that direction. I think Hoaxed is going to help with that and opening people's eyes. Here.
See the Hoax trailer and see what we're talking about. This
Yeah.
movie is great. Hoaxed, produced by Mike Cernovich. You need to see this movie, and because I want to see it again. It premieres Saturday. We got to get it spread to more theaters. It's not a huge company that put this out. And as always, at the end of our shows, we talk about don't accept the first take on any story.
Yeah, just like
Wait
this morning.
48, 72 hours.
Just like this morning with
Elizabeth Warren.
I mean, look at how it was this morning, and the mainstream media was, oh, the DNA.
Well, the
it's
Boston
proved.
Globe,
She's
Boston
a Native
Globe
American.
jumps on it, and then a few hours later, oh, we got to retract. Or the other day, take NBC. Oh, here's the full transcript. Here's the full context of Trump's remarks about Lee and Grant.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And it's on purpose.
It's
we know
all
it is. They
on
hate.
purpose.
They hate him. And guys, you may disagree about Trump and all this stuff, and the media's not biased. Just the one example that I can use over and over again is when Trump went to Japan and they did the fish feeding, and he did that with the
48
prime minister or
right.
with the emperor, I think. Of
Yeah.
Japan. And CNN kept showing, oh, Trump just dumped, and then they did freaking hour-long. I mean, they just did panels on Trump was going to kill those fish because the way he fed them.
Right.
And they cut out that
He did the
was
same
just
thing.
following what the emperor of Japan just did with the fish. I mean, it's a stupid little thing, but they're lying about it, and because it's trying to make Trump look bad. So
And it happens. It's happened so many times now that I'm not giving them the benefit of the doubt anymore.
cannot
It's
be.
intentional. They want to get the views for their mind-numbed followers out there to get that encoded
And then they
in their
retract
brain.
later,
and
and
then
nobody
they retract,
sees
and
that.
those guys don't see the retraction. It's just also very intentional, and it's diabolical. And so, the 48-hour
And even with
rule-
Boston Globe doing the correction today, well, we had a
Oh, yeah.
correction on. There was an error in math. Okay, well, first of all, when you're going public with a story, mathematics is the most. It's either this
Right.
or this. It's the easiest thing to make it right before you go.
Yeah,
But-
bullies in high school do the same thing. Yeah, bullies everywhere do the same
But
thing.
even with that, we made a mistake. The original one was still up also. The original story.
Yeah.
They didn't take it down. They just went, oh, we need to clarify
Every time I see
this."
it, did you ever watch Urkel?
No, I didn't.
He had this phrase. He would say, "Did I do that?" And then when they say that, I corrected. They say, they've got a correction, and
Oh, did I say Don Jr. got an email on this
Oh,
date?
my
But it was
bad.
really
Did
10
I
days
do
later.
that?
We verified it.
Yeah, the way that Elizabeth Warren has become a joke. That's the mainstream media, and I can't. The sooner they die a metaphorical death,
Yeah.
not
Die at the ballot box.
Yeah, I can't
Defeated.
wait for the midterms. Get out and vote.
And I'll tell you, I'm voting all Republican. For
I just
sure.
don't care. I just don't. But
But-
the left is crazy.
But once I do this, I know that there are Republicans that need to go in the next primaries.
Right.
This is a round we got to get through.
It's a necessary.
Because the Republican Party has been complicit in so much of this crap.
Yeah.
And these guys, and some of these never Trumpers some of them are trying to make good and trying to rehabilitate, but they've got a long way to go.
They do, and who knows? Maybe some of them will, stay on the right course. Maybe some of them won't. But definitely going to vote all Republican, and then after they're elected, hold them accountable.
Yeah, and that's what we're starting at redpillsentinel.com.
Yeah,
We're
at
gonna
Red
start
Pill
going after
Sentinel. I was
these
just
guys.
going to mention the fact that about the congressional slush fund that pays out money for sexual harassment claims. Now, all the money isn't for sexual harassment claims. I know there are other issues, but
They're not releasing those, and they are supposed to.
yeah, they're not releasing it. You can find out the stuff that's not sexual harassment related. That's on the Office of Compliance website. But anyway, at Red Pill Sentinel, what we're trying to do is make a list of congressional leaders who haven't had money paid out, and we've got our
Representatives
first.
and senators, and we have our
Yeah,
first.
We have our first. It's Trent Kelly.
Trent Kelly has never had a payout for sexual harassment ever, and we know that people aren't going to answer that. Oh yeah, I've sexually harassed somebody, but it's supposed to be released. The Act from 1995 says that they're supposed to name the office where it was paid, and that representative or senator is supposed to pay that money back that's paid out from that fund.
Right.
So we need to dig into that more. It's kind of opaque right now. We've been to the site and trying
But
to.
I think if we can get some more people on the record stating that they haven't, that maybe we can create kind of a domino effect.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll feel more pressure to say something if they know somebody else has.
Yeah.
And if they don't want to go on record, well,
And then, well, it's
you know.
halfway there anyway.
well, if they don't
Or
go on
like
record, I would.
Allie was saying, we're to 0 now.
Yeah.
Now we need to get to
Yeah.
+1 maybe.
But my point is, if they don't go on record, why would
Yeah.
they not want to go on
Yeah.
record? Because, you know, maybe they're guilty.
I will neither confirm nor deny.
All right. So that's about it. Thank you guys for tuning in and watching. And next month, the Ides of March is going to be
On
on
the 13th.
13th. And
And we hope to have
thank you very much for joining in.
we hope to have news of a good interview in a week or two.
Oh yeah, could Gary
And
Condit.
all tied into the fake news and just the terrible narratives that they can run on us and keep us
And
distracted
destroy,
from what's really going on.
you know,
Destroy
people's
lives in the
lives,
process.
and they don't even care.
And just the inconsistencies. That's why the whole whataboutism, and they try to throw that back.
Yeah.
Oh, all you do is then throw up Clinton. I said all that does is highlight your inconsistencies.
Right.
When you defend it in one place.
And if they don't like what we're doing, then we're right over the target. That's
Yeah.
I've learned
Oh,
that.
That's
So
exactly right.
right over the target. So anyway, until next time, but make sure that you go vote. Early voting starts in a lot of places soon. Take 3 voters with you or more, and vote like your life depends on it.
Because it does in some ways.
It's more important than anything else. And,
Thank you guys.
And we'll see you next time.